The Bloodline is dead. At least, that's what everyone thought. But just when the WWE Universe started writing Roman Reigns off, the tribal chief dropped a nuclear announcement that shocked the locker room. Zilla Fatu, the son of Umaga, has officially joined Roman Reigns. Not as a tag partner. Not as a prospect. As his personal enforcer. With Money in the Bank 2025 looming and Seth Rollins' alliance with Paul Heyman growing stronger, Reigns didn't just respond, he escalated. This isn't about legacy anymore. This is about survival. And Zilla Fatu? He's not here to play Roman's cousin. He's here to break necks for the family name. Strap in. The chessboard just changed. On April 7, 2024, the unthinkable happened. Roman Reigns, champion for over 1,300 days, was pinned clean at WrestleMania. No outside interference. No referee swerve. No low blow. Just 3 seconds. A moment that shattered an empire 3 years in the making. The tribal chief fell. And with him, the myth of the Bloodline collapsed. Jay was gone. Jimmy betrayed. Solo had vanished into the fog. Paul Heyman? Suspiciously quiet. The WWE Universe moved on. Factions restructured. Seth Rollins built momentum. LA Knight got louder. Cody stood tall. The Bloodline story? A chapter closed. Or so it seemed. Because just when everyone thought the Reigns era had ended, he reminded us, power never disappears. It just goes underground. And on a random SmackDown in June 2025, it exploded. No teaser. No hype package. Just lights out, music cut, and Roman Reigns walking through the fog, not in his usual ceremonial armor, not with titles, but with purpose. And beside him? A figure no one expected. A shadow forged in the legacy of one of wrestling's most violent warriors. Zilla Fatu. Let's stop here. To understand the gravity of this moment, you have to rewind. Zilla Fatu isn't just another Samoan cousin plucked from obscurity. He's the son of Umaga, the Samoan bulldozer. The man who tore through Raw in the ruthless aggression era like a wrecking ball with tribal paint. But Zilla? He didn't enter the WWE like Solo or the Usos. No carefully curated PC documentary. No cushy main roster debut. Zilla did time. Real prison time. Years spent in the system. Not developmental. The judicial one. This man didn't just fight in rings, he fought for his future. When he got out, it wasn't WWE that called. It was Booker T. It was independent training camps. It was reputation earned by grit, not bloodline. So when Roman brought him in, not as a tag team partner, not as a protege, but as an enforcer, the message was loud and crystal clear: this isn't about family. This is about war. Because on the other side of the chessboard, Paul Heyman was scheming. Seth Rollins had already picked up the pieces of a crumbling WWE and started rebuilding it in his image. The architect. The Messiah. Now, the general. And Paul Heyman? No longer whispering in Roman's ear. He was now at Seth's table. Reigns didn't bring Zilla into WWE to carry on tradition. He brought him in to bury it. Zilla Fatu isn't here to throw up the ones or participate in superkick parties. He's not smiling in backstage segments. He's not looking for his first tag title. Zilla has been unleashed. Not recruited. Not welcomed. Unleashed. This isn't legacy preservation. This is domination insurance. A response to Rollins and Heyman, who'd been quietly assembling a dangerous coalition backstage, combining charisma, athleticism, and strategy in a way even the Shield never did. Roman knew he couldn't play by the same rules anymore. The gloves are off. So instead of reuniting with Solo Sikoa or calling back the Usos, he broke the bloodline mold. He brought in someone unpredictable. Violent. Untested, but uncontrollable. And the first thing Zilla did? He didn't shake hands. He didn't talk. He snatched a camera off a ringside crew member, looked straight into the lens, and said, "This ain't no reunion. This is a reset. If you wear a suit and work for Paul Heyman, you're a target. And Seth? You're first." WWE Twitter erupted. Instagram Reels caught backstage chaos. The locker room, previously divided between legacy loyalties and brand politics, now had a new concern: what is Zilla capable of? This wasn't Solo, the stoic cousin. This wasn't Jay, conflicted and emotional. Zilla hit like Umaga but stared like Roman. Cold. Unforgiving. And very much a storm waiting to happen. Clips of him training in isolation surfaced online. Sparring sessions where he left 3 practice partners unable to continue. Footage from Booker T's Reality of Wrestling showed a young man trying not to wrestle, but to hurt. And now he has a license to do just that. On WWE's biggest stages. Backed by Roman Reigns. And aiming for Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. This video isn't just a hype package. It's a war dossier. We're breaking down how Zilla Fatu's debut changes everything heading into Money in the Bank 2025. We'll dive into the quiet formation of the Heyman-Rollins faction, Zilla Fatu's criminal past and redemption arc, Roman's new philosophy: no more family, only force, locker room reactions and real backstage tension, the MITB card implications and rumored betrayals. And what happens if Zilla decides Roman is just another emperor ready to fall? By the end of this story, one thing will be clear: the bloodline isn't dead. It's mutated. This is no longer about who wears the crown. This is about who survives the fallout. So strap in. The game has changed. And if you're still watching wrestling like it's scripted, you're about to get hurt. For months, the WWE Universe lived under a strange illusion. With Roman Reigns gone, the Bloodline storyline finished, and Cody Rhodes completing his story, it felt like the page had finally turned. What followed wasn't chaos, it was quiet. A manufactured calm that covered the ring like fog. The kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, but signals that something dangerous is on its way. On the surface, WWE was moving forward. New storylines formed. Championships changed hands. Seth Rollins returned from injury with a renewed edge. Paul Heyman slowly re-emerged, not as an advocate, but as an operator. All the while, the absence of Roman Reigns loomed like unfinished business. He wasn't being talked about, but no one dared to forget him. This silence wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Roman had disappeared. Not on a stretcher. Not in defeat. He walked out of WrestleMania without his titles, without his faction, without a word. No press conference. No farewell promo. He simply left. He let the world assume he was finished. The fans turned their attention to other feuds. Damian Priest's reign. Drew McIntyre's heel turn. LA Knight's momentum. Rollins versus Cody, again. But through all of it, no one really answered the question: what happened to the bloodline? The truth is, nothing ended. It just went dark. Roman Reigns isn't the kind of man to exit quietly. He's the kind of man who studies, waits, and returns when the conditions are right to take back what was stolen. That was the play all along. While the cameras focused on other wrestlers, while Triple H reorganized the creative landscape, Roman watched. Patiently. Silently. He knew exactly what was happening, and who was pulling the strings. Paul Heyman had slithered his way back into relevance, this time behind Seth Rollins. The architect had become something more dangerous, calculated. Strategic. No longer flashy for the sake of it, Rollins had become surgical. While others were wrestling for moments, he was setting traps. Reigns saw it coming. But he didn't flinch. He waited. The calm that followed WrestleMania wasn't just a narrative pause. It was a setup. Roman knew that to reclaim power, he couldn't use the same tools. The old bloodline had decayed. Too many emotional fractures. Too much family drama. He needed something colder. Sharper. Cleaner. That's when Zilla Fatu entered the picture. But before that name meant anything, before he stepped onto WWE soil, Roman had to burn the old structure to the ground. He couldn't just replace Jimmy and Jay with new cousins. The fans would see through that. The locker room would smell weakness. No. He had to strip the empire to its bones and rebuild from something even more ruthless. During this calm, Paul Heyman was doing the opposite. He was recruiting. Quietly assembling a new faction, more corporate than tribal. A collection of hybrid wrestlers, strong, fast, media-savvy, and obedient. Rollins led the charge, but Heyman orchestrated every beat. The plan was to monopolize MITB 2025. The briefcase. The title shots. The alliances. Everything. One faction to dominate all brands. No one paid attention because Heyman disguised it as storyline evolution. But Reigns wasn't buying it. He knew Heyman's patterns. Heyman never serves talent. He serves power. And with Roman dethroned, Seth became the next vessel. The bloodline wasn't just betrayed. It was replaced. That was the real storm forming under the surface. Not in the ring, but in the control rooms. In production meetings. In travel schedules and creative rewrites. Heyman was shifting WWE's center of gravity. And everyone was too distracted to notice. Except Reigns. He spent the months post-WrestleMania isolating himself. No endorsements. No podcasts. No public appearances. He wasn't healing. He was calculating. Watching how Rollins rose. Watching how Heyman positioned himself. And more importantly, watching who fell in line behind them. The mistake everyone made was assuming Roman would come back with a vengeance. That he'd storm into Raw with pyro and a promo. That he'd call out Rollins and demand a rematch. That he'd fall back on old bloodline tactics. He didn't. He waited. He let the calm stretch until it turned uncomfortable. Until people started whispering about his retirement. Until fans started wondering if he had walked away for good. That was the moment he was waiting for. Because real power doesn't return when it's expected. It reappears when it's almost forgotten. And then, quietly, without build-up, he walked back into the arena. No music. No pyro. Just Roman Reigns in street clothes, walking down a ramp while commentary scrambled to make sense of it. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer, boo, or stay silent. That was the effect of the silence he'd cultivated. Confusion. Disorientation. Fear. And then, out of the shadows, a taller, thicker figure emerged beside him. No Titantron. No name on the screen. Just a presence. Someone the fans didn't recognize at first. Until the camera zoomed in and caught the tattoos, the eyes, the energy. Zilla Fatu. The crowd reaction wasn't a pop, it was a collective gasp. Not because they knew him. But because they didn't. And yet, somehow, they understood exactly what he represented. Danger. That moment broke the calm. Roman didn't pick up a mic. He didn't cut a promo. He stared into the camera and spoke 6 words, "This isn't over. This is worse." That line wasn't for the fans. It wasn't even for Seth Rollins. It was for Paul Heyman. And everyone backstage understood it instantly. The calm was over. The storm had arrived. This chapter in the story wasn't about family reunion. It was about retaliation. Vengeance, but smarter. The kind that doesn't come from the heart. It comes from strategy, from patience, from pain stored and sharpened like a knife. The months following WrestleMania weren't a cooldown. They were an ambush waiting to happen. Roman had been watching from the shadows. Paul Heyman had built a machine with Seth at the front. And now Roman had a weapon of his own, Zilla Fatu, forged in real-life violence, unshaped by the system, and driven by loyalty to the only person who gave him a chance. This is the part of the war where sides are chosen. And you can feel the tension begin to rise. Not in matches, but in the way wrestlers look over their shoulders backstage. In the way promos are worded more carefully. In the way referees glance nervously when Roman appears ringside without warning. The calm wasn't peace. It was setup. Now the setup is over. And the pieces are moving. Money in the Bank isn't going to be a match card. It's going to be a battlefield. And the silence that once blanketed WWE has been replaced with something else entirely, the sound of a war machine starting back up. Are you ready? Because the calm before the storm just ended. Let's get to work. Before he became a looming threat on WWE programming, before he walked through the smoke alongside Roman Reigns, before a single promo, finisher, or stare down, Zilla Fatu was a ghost. Not because no one knew his name, but because everyone thought they already knew his story. Son of Umaga? That alone would earn interest. Nephew to Rikishi, cousin to the Usos, distant bloodline to Roman Reigns himself, his family tree reads like a Hall of Fame induction ballot. But the truth is, Zilla Fatu wasn't groomed by the system. He wasn't waiting in the wings for a call-up. He wasn't even in the conversation. He was lost. And he chose violence before the ring ever chose him. Born Joseph Fatu, Zilla didn't grow up in the glitz of arenas or under the bright lights of WrestleMania. He grew up in the shadow of a legacy he never asked for, carrying a last name that came with expectations he didn't understand. While his uncles and cousins traveled the world, building dynasties and stacking titles, Zilla was being pulled into a different arena entirely, the streets of Houston. His father, Umaga, real name Edward Fatu, passed away in 2009 when Zilla was just a teenager. The trauma of losing a parent is heavy enough. Losing one who was a global wrestling icon? It created a void not even time could fill. The world knew Umaga as a wrecking machine. Zilla knew him as a father who didn't come back home one day. And that loss shaped everything that came after. Zilla fell hard into the streets. Not as a gimmick. Not to build credibility. This was real life. Drugs. Fights. Charges. In and out of trouble until the system finally caught up with him. Prison wasn't a scare tactic for Zilla, it was a reality. A cage not made of steel chairs or hell in a cell walls, but concrete and regret. And inside those walls, something changed. Zilla didn't have cameras around him. No WWE documentaries following his redemption arc. Just time. Time to think. Time to hurt. Time to realize that his father's legacy wasn't going to save him, but maybe, just maybe, it could inspire him to save himself. He got out. Clean. No fanfare. No confetti. Just a quiet decision to start again. Instead of chasing a call from WWE, he walked into Booker T's reality of wrestling school in Texas, no connections, no favors. He started as every other trainee did, bump drills, conditioning, sweeping floors. Booker T didn't hand him a spotlight. He handed him a mop. And Zilla accepted it. Because that's what men do when they're building something from scratch. It was in that school that people started whispering. The intensity. The power. The way Zilla moved, not like someone trying to impress a scout, but like someone trying to exorcise demons. His style was raw. Heavy. Ugly in the most beautiful way. He didn't wrestle. He fought. Trainers noticed. Teammates took caution. Booker T himself admitted in interviews that Zilla had something you couldn't teach, real pain. Real violence. And, most dangerous of all, restraint. Zilla knew when to unleash it, and when to hold back just enough to keep people guessing. That made him terrifying. He didn't want to cut promos. He wasn't interested in merch deals. He didn't smile in photos. Everything he did was about preparing himself for one moment, the moment someone in his family decided he was no longer an outsider. That call came from the top. Roman Reigns had watched Zilla's progress from afar. At first out of curiosity. Then out of interest. Then with focus. Reigns wasn't looking for another cousin to mentor. He was looking for a weapon. Because Roman didn't need trust anymore. The old bloodline taught him that family could fracture. What he needed now was control. Loyalty. Power. Zilla offered all three, not through blood ties, but through gratitude. Roman didn't offer him a tryout. He offered him a role. Not a tag team partner. Not a developmental call-up. An enforcer. And Zilla accepted on one condition: he didn't want to be presented as part of the family. No tribal tattoos. No elaborate entrances. No fake smiles. He wasn't here to be another Uso. He was here to be a storm. And make no mistake, Zilla is a storm. The footage from his early work at Reality of Wrestling shows it. One segment in particular, barely seen outside the indie loop, shows him delivering 5 straight Samoan drops in under 90 seconds. The audience didn't cheer. They recoiled. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't smooth. It was savage. That word, savage, is in his DNA. Not as a gimmick. Not as a throwback to his father. As a way of life. When he finally arrived in WWE alongside Roman, it didn't feel like a debut. It felt like a warning. Standing 6'4", 275 pounds, with his head shaved and his stare unbroken, Zilla looked like the kind of enforcer who doesn't answer to creative. He answers to chaos. He doesn't speak in long monologues. He doesn't need to. His silence is louder than any entrance theme. It's why Roman chose him. Because after everything the bloodline went through. After betrayal, after disloyalty, after years of putting family first, Reigns wasn't interested in blood anymore. He was interested in fire. Controlled fire. Zilla Fatu burns differently than anyone WWE has ever seen. He's not trying to be better than his father. He's trying to make sure no one ever forgets him. And now, that energy has been weaponized. Paul Heyman knows what this means. Seth Rollins definitely knows. Because the mind games they played for months? They don't work on someone like Zilla. You can't bait a man who's already faced real cages. You can't rattle someone who's already broken. And now that broken man has been molded into a weapon, sharpened by pain, pointed by Roman Reigns, and aimed at the heads of everyone who thought the story was over. This isn't a comeback story. It's a hit list. And Zilla Fatu is already checking names off. He's not the future of the bloodline. He's its reckoning. Silence can be a weapon. And Roman Reigns used it better than any promo in wrestling history. For nearly a year after losing the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, Roman didn't say a word on television. No emotional backstage segments. No social media cryptic messages. Nothing. Fans speculated. Insiders guessed. But Reigns, the man who once dominated every mic and every moment, vanished like a myth collapsing into fog. What people didn't understand is that Roman wasn't healing from a loss. He was preparing for a return. There's a difference. The night of his comeback wasn't even advertised. There were no countdowns, no head-of-the-table flashes on the LED boards. Just a random Friday night SmackDown in mid-June. The kind of show where people expected another tag team shuffle match or maybe a lukewarm Money in the Bank qualifier. Instead, the lights went out during the second hour. Not for a commercial break. Not as part of anyone's entrance. Just darkness. At first, the fans cheered. Conditioning. Years of knowing that when the lights cut out, something's coming. And then nothing happened. 30 seconds of pitch-blackened silence in a sold-out arena feels like a lifetime. Commentary had gone silent. The ring sat under a single emergency spotlight. No theme played. No Titantron fired up. Then the camera panned to the entrance ramp. There he was. No music. No pyro. Just boots on the steel. Slow, deliberate. Roman Reigns. He wasn't wearing his usual black tactical gear. No red lay around his neck. No title over his shoulder. Just a plain black hoodie, his hair tied back, and eyes locked forward. Focused. Cold. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just stood up. It felt like seeing a ghost. Like someone who shouldn't be back was suddenly in front of them again. Roman didn't lift his arms. He didn't acknowledge the crowd. He walked straight to the ring and climbed in like it was his house and we were squatters. The ring announcer didn't say a word. Neither did the commentary team. You could almost hear the production truck whispering to each other, "Do we roll the intro music? Do we go to break?" Before any decision could be made, the camera cut wide. And out walked someone new. Zilla Fatu. Not through the crowd. Not from the back with a surprise attack. He came down the ramp, in step behind Roman, but not as a follower. As a presence. If Roman looked like judgment, Zilla looked like wrath. No one in the arena needed context. The story was telling itself in real time. This wasn't a handshake. This wasn't a welcome party. This was an arrival with a purpose. The commentators finally broke the silence. That's Zilla Fatu, that's Umaga's son. Corey Graves stammered it out like the words were being pulled from his throat. Michael Cole didn't even respond. He just stared at the screen. Zilla stepped up onto the apron. He didn't pose. He didn't mug for the camera. He stood there, hand resting on the top rope, letting the arena process it. Roman took the mic. Not the branded gold one he used to carry. Just a plain black stick. He stood in the center of the ring, crowd still unsure what to chant. And then he spoke. "I told you this wasn't over." A pause. "I told you I don't lose. I wait." Another pause. Then he turned to the hard cam and delivered the words that changed the direction of the entire summer. Everyone keeps asking who's next. Who's gonna take the throne? Who's going to rise now that the bloodline is gone? He looked at Zilla, then looked back at the camera. There is no throne. He let the words sink in. Then he continued. I'm not here to rebuild. I'm not here to regroup. I'm here to erase what tried to replace me. The arena started to buzz. Fans began realizing what this was. This wasn't a comeback. This was a declaration of war. Roman pointed to Zilla. This man? He's not my cousin. He's not my tag team partner. He's not blood. He paused again. He's my enforcer. The crowd popped. Loud. Mixed. Confused. Roman continued. He's not here to protect me. He's here to punish you. He didn't name names, but everyone in the building knew exactly who the U was. Paul Heyman. Seth Rollins. And every person who had positioned themselves as the new backbone of WWE in Roman's absence. Then Roman said something that cracked the internet in half, the bloodline is dead. But the consequences are not. He dropped the mic. Not theatrically. Just let it fall to the mat like punctuation. Zilla stepped into the ring, finally, and stood shoulder to shoulder with Roman. No acknowledgement between them. No nods. No shared signal. Just alignment. And then the camera caught Zilla's expression. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posing. He looked straight into the lens, jaw locked, and said 3 words, "Let's go hunting." That was it. The lights went out again. When they came back on, the ring was empty. But the ripple effects had just begun. Backstage reports came flooding in that night. Wrestlers were scrambling. Some thought it was a one-off. Others knew better. Paul Heyman reportedly left the arena mid-show. Seth Rollins was seen leaving his suite early, refusing to talk to media. This wasn't a return. This was a signal that Roman Reigns hadn't been defeated. He had been waiting. And now he had the one thing his former family never gave him, absolute obedience. Zilla Fatu doesn't question orders. He doesn't ask for moments. He executes. That's the problem Seth and Heyman now face. Because they'd built something slick, corporate, and coordinated. But what Roman just introduced to WWE is chaos wearing boots. The announcement wasn't just a promo segment. It was a bullet fired in the opening salvo of a war nobody realized had already started. And now every locker room in WWE knows one thing: Roman Reigns isn't looking to reclaim what he lost. He's looking to annihilate what was built in his absence. And Zilla Fatu is the wrecking ball he plans to use to do it. Everything Roman Reigns has done in the last 4 years has followed a pattern. Not a random streak of dominance, not just brute strength, it's been strategy. Method. Calculation. He's never just fought matches. He's controlled narratives. So, when he re-emerged with Zilla Fatu as his enforcer, it wasn't sentimental. It was strategic. To understand the move, you have to zoom out. Roman Reigns has been at war with 2 enemies since his return in 2020. The first is the locker room. The second is perception. The locker room wanted his crown. The audience wanted his downfall. For years, he beat both by staying 1 move ahead. Now, stripped of titles and betrayed by his former allies, he's not playing the same game anymore. He's flipping the board. And to do that, he needed a piece no one expected. Zilla Fatu is that piece. On paper, he's a wild card. 0 main roster experience. No NXT run. No official WWE contract until days before his debut. That's not an accident. That's a weapon by design. Roman didn't go back to the usual suspects. He didn't bring back Jimmy or Jay. He didn't call in Solo Sikoa. He didn't even lean on legends. He went underground. Because Zilla isn't about public image. He's about impact. Roman has learned that charisma can be a liability. Trust can be a weakness. He made his cousins stars, and they used that spotlight to fracture the bloodline. Paul Heyman, once the architect of Roman's legacy, jumped ship the moment his stock dropped. Zilla, on the other hand, doesn't want the spotlight. He doesn't want the mic. He doesn't want respect. He wants orders. And the opportunity to hurt people. That's what makes him valuable. Because Roman doesn't need another faction. He needs a purge. Let's break this down tactically. Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman are operating like a political alliance. Seth is the face, flashy, beloved, powerful. Heyman is the spine, manipulative, invisible, always 10 steps ahead. Together, they've quietly built a coalition of high-level talent who follow structure, branding, merch. It's WWE's version of a Silicon Valley empire. Sharp suits. Smirks. Private jets. Roman's counterplay isn't to compete with polish. It's to weaponize chaos. Zilla represents unpredictability. Not because he's reckless, but because no one in WWE has seen his full capacity. There's no footage to study. No previous matches to review. Opponents can't plan against him because they don't know what he'll do. And that's the point. You can't counter what you can't predict. Seth thrives in structure. Heyman builds empires around control. Roman's strategy now is to tear all of that down using a blunt object shaped like a man. But there's another layer. Zilla's inexperience is actually an asset. He hasn't been molded by the WWE system. He doesn't play to the crowd. He doesn't care about pop culture moments. He's untouched by sports entertainment. That rawness allows Roman to direct him without ego getting in the way. When Roman tells Zilla to destroy someone, he doesn't hesitate. He obeys. And that's terrifying to people like Seth, who have spent their careers navigating alliances and outsmarting opponents. You can't outsmart a force of nature. You can only survive it. Another point, Zilla comes with no emotional attachments. No family drama. No torn loyalties. He's not part of the tribal lineage politics that haunted the original Bloodline. He doesn't care about Jey Uso's betrayal or Solo's indecision. He wasn't part of the fall. He's just here for the aftermath. That makes him clean. And clean soldiers are easier to deploy. Roman isn't building a legacy anymore. He's building an enforcement mechanism. And just like any smart general, he's not showing all his cards at once. Zilla's debut wasn't flashy because Roman didn't want him peaking too early. He wants fear to grow slowly. He wants opponents wondering, how strong is he really? What's his signature move? Can he talk? Is he controllable? Roman will feed those answers one by one. Because ambiguity is power. The mystery around Zilla is as dangerous as his actual strength. Think about this, when Brock Lesnar debuted in 2002, he was a monster. But people had seen him coming through OVW. When Braun Strowman first showed up, he was introduced as a Wyatt. Even Solo had buzz around him in NXT. Zilla appeared out of nowhere. He doesn't have a track record. He has a reputation. That's more powerful than a resume. The strategy is working. Already, we're hearing murmurs of unease backstage. Mid-carders are adjusting their alignments. Tag teams are reconsidering their partnerships. The MITB card has become unstable. Not because of announced matches, but because no one knows who Zilla might target next. And that's the beauty of the move. Roman doesn't have to show up every week. Zilla can. And his presence alone changes the narrative. Because now, every show is haunted by the possibility of an ambush. Every promo might end in violence. Every match might be stopped by a man no one fully understands. This isn't storyline heat. It's systemic disruption. Zilla is Roman's firewall. His weaponized shadow. And Roman? He's sitting back and watching the chaos unfold with the confidence of a man who knows he just made the smartest move of his career. Because here's the real truth behind the chess move: Paul Heyman plays to win the game. Roman Reigns plays to end it. And with Zilla Fatu in his corner, he just put the king, the bishop, and every pawn on notice. If Roman Reigns is the warlord and Zilla Fatu is the hammer, then Paul Heyman has always been the knife in the dark. Quiet. Surgical. Cold. Heyman doesn't swing weapons. He whispers to them. And for nearly 4 years, he stood beside Roman Reigns, not just as an advocate, but as the voice of authority, the co-author of dominance, the invisible architect behind the tribal chief's mythos. Until he wasn't. Betrayals in wrestling are often theatrical. Chairs to the back. Shock promos. Contract signings gone sideways. But when Paul Heyman betrayed Roman Reigns, there was no slap, no announcement, no official break. He just disappeared. When Roman lost at WrestleMania, the camera didn't catch Heyman comforting him. There was no teary-eyed backstage promo. No segment of reflection. He was there one day. And gone the next. That's how masterminds operate. They don't leave with fanfare. They vanish with leverage. The truth is, Heyman had already started planning Roman's replacement long before WrestleMania. Because Heyman isn't loyal to champions. He's loyal to power. When that power begins to crack. Whether it's Brock Lesnar in 2018 or Reigns in 2024, Heyman knows to start moving pieces. Seth Rollins was that piece. Not because he needed Paul Heyman, but because Heyman knew Seth was the only man smart enough, ambitious enough, and egotistical enough to recognize what they could build together. Roman ran the bloodline as a monarchy. Seth offered a republic. In Heyman's mind, that's evolution. Look at the timeline. In late 2023, Heyman started showing up on Raw unannounced. Just checking in, he'd say. He'd be seen backstage during Seth's interviews. A few conversations here. A handshake there. Fans chalked it up to nostalgia, two former allies crossing paths. But it wasn't nostalgia. It was recruitment. And Rollins, brilliant, theatrical, vindictive, knew exactly what this meant. Heyman wasn't just offering advice. He was offering structure. Legacy. Authority. The kind you can't earn with title belts or crowd chants. The kind you have to manipulate, brick by brick. Heyman brought with him all the tools that once made Roman a god. Strategic appearances. Promo timing. Control over media optics. And perhaps most importantly, a roadmap to controlling WWE without holding every belt. Because Heyman knows how power works behind the curtain. The crowd loves chaos. The boardroom loves control. And while Roman ruled the chaos with Zilla, Seth began ruling the control with Heyman. But don't mistake Heyman's move for disloyalty in the traditional sense. To him, loyalty is transactional. It's not about who deserves to lead. It's about who allows him to stay behind the throne. With Roman, Heyman had to whisper. With Seth, Heyman gets to speak. That shift in dynamic is crucial. Seth doesn't need to be propped up. He doesn't need Heyman as a mouthpiece. That makes their alliance more dangerous. Heyman isn't managing Seth's perception. He's engineering WWE's future. Together, they've begun assembling something slicker than the bloodline. Not tribal. Not emotional. Systemic. Functional. A machine built for long-term supremacy. Zilla Fatu doesn't care about systems. That's what terrifies Heyman. Because the only thing more dangerous than a monster you can't control is a monster who doesn't need a spotlight. And Heyman knows exactly what Roman has unleashed. He saw the look in Roman's eyes when he reappeared. It wasn't rage. It was focus. It was a man who no longer wants to build, only to burn. And Zilla Fatu? That's his accelerant. For months, Heyman has moved like a ghost between brands. Scripting Rollins' rise. Whispering to talent. Testing loyalty. Positioning future members of this quiet faction. All of it done with surgical precision. But Roman's return was not part of the plan. Zilla's presence? An unexpected variable. That's the problem with power moves, they work until someone plays a piece you didn't anticipate. Heyman knows Roman better than anyone. He knows how he thinks, how he plots. But Zilla? That's outside Heyman's database. And unpredictability breaks systems. Heyman's plan with Seth wasn't just about gold. It was about establishing ideological dominance. Reigns led by fear. Seth leads by belief. Reigns built hierarchy. Seth builds allegiance. But belief has a flaw, it can be broken with pain. And that's what Zilla brings. He doesn't talk. He doesn't politic. He doesn't post selfies with titles. He shows up and leaves people broken. Heyman knows from experience. When force meets strategy, it's not always the smarter side that wins. It's the side willing to go further. So now Heyman is scrambling. He's calling in favors. Trying to fast-track Rollins' faction into something more than just a vision. There are rumblings, new recruits. Up-and-comers being promised protection. Backstage whispers of Braun Breaker. Of Jacob Fatu. Even Solo Sikoa's name has re-emerged in shadowed conversations. Because Heyman understands what this has become. It's not about legacy anymore. It's about war. He's not trying to beat Roman in a match. He's trying to erase him from the structure of WWE. Because as long as Reigns walks into the arena, even without a title, he commands fear. And Heyman can't afford to let that fear grow again. So he's doing what he does best, aligning himself with momentum and using perception as a weapon. He's staging interviews, spinning narratives, selling the Seth Heyman alliance as the future of WWE. But even Heyman, behind those tired eyes, knows the truth: this isn't the future. This is the reckoning. And he helped cause it. So, the real question isn't whether Heyman betrayed Roman. It's whether he outsmarted him. Because if he didn't, then Roman didn't just come back with an enforcer. He came back with a hitman. And Heyman's name is at the top of the list. The bloodline was built on blood. But the new empire Paul Heyman is building? It runs on calculation. When Paul Heyman aligned himself with Seth Rollins, it wasn't just a creative choice. It was a pivot from a collapsing monarchy to a rising syndicate. One that didn't need familial loyalty. One that didn't need tribal rituals or symbolic gestures. One that operated like a corporation. Cold. Clean. Unstoppable. The early signs were subtle. Rollins cutting fewer jokes, tightening his wardrobe, speaking with more authority. Gone were the days of wild outfits and maniacal laughter. Slowly, the visionary became a strategist. No longer wrestling just for moments, he began orchestrating narratives. At first, it looked like evolution. Now it looks like war prep. Because while Roman Reigns was absent, licking his wounds and plotting his return, Seth and Heyman were building something massive. Not a faction with a name or matching t-shirts. Something more dangerous. An infrastructure. Rollins wasn't looking for sidekicks. He was creating layers. Trusted performers, specialists, bodyguards, influencers. If the bloodline was a kingdom, this was a syndicate. And the cornerstone of that syndicate? Braun Breaker. The first time Heyman was seen backstage with Braun, it barely registered. A passing image. But to those paying attention, it was the first major sign. Breaker isn't just another rising star. He's wrestling royalty. The son of Rick Steiner. The nephew of Scott. Built like a linebacker, but faster. Explosive. Mean when he wants to be. He's not designed for tag teams. He's not waiting in line. He's a future world champion, and everyone knows it. So why align him with Rollins? Because Rollins is smart. He knows he can't outpower Roman Reigns. But if he surrounds himself with raw talent, guys like Braun, who can match Zilla Fatu's strength and athleticism, he doesn't have to throw punches. He just has to aim them. Breaker is the perfect first soldier. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't play politics. He hits hard, and he listens. Exactly the kind of presence Seth needs standing beside him. Because Zilla Fatu's debut changed the equation. Before Zilla, Seth had breathing room. He had control over Raw, growing influence over SmackDown, and a creative team warming to his leadership style. But the moment Zilla showed up, Roman's presence returned, not through words, but through weight. Rollins knew then, this wasn't about titles anymore. This was survival. So he and Heyman doubled down. More recruits. More leverage. The rumor mill started spinning. Jacob Fatu, the real-life cousin of Zilla, began surfacing in backstage talks. A beast in the Indies. Unrestrained. Ruthless. Blood-related, yes, but not loyal. If Roman pulled Zilla from the shadows, what's stopping Heyman from doing the same with Jacob? The possibility alone adds volatility to every card. And then there's Solo Sikoa. The wild card. Since WrestleMania, Solo has gone dark. No appearances. No interviews. No brand alignment. Nothing. And yet, his name keeps surfacing. Not in creative meetings. In whispers. There's a theory: Heyman is trying to turn solo. Convince him that Roman abandoned him. That he was just a pawn in the family game. That Seth could offer him something more than loyalty, agency. If Heyman succeeds in flipping solo, it's not just betrayal. It's declaration. Because that move would fracture the emotional core of Roman's story. And that's exactly what Heyman wants. This faction isn't just about power. It's about erasure. Erasing the past. Replacing the mythology of the bloodline with a new dynasty, one founded not on blood, but on control. It doesn't stop there. Heyman's network runs deep. Managers. Agents. NXT scouts. If you think this is limited to Braun and maybe Solo, think again. There are reports of tag teams being approached. Mid-carders promise title pushes if they fall in line. People like Carmelo Hayes, Ilya Dragunov, and even veterans like Finn Balor are all being circled, not to form a clique, but to fortify a structure. This isn't a stable. It's a system. One designed to outlast every storyline, every swerve, every main event face turn. Seth may be the face, but Heyman is building the skeleton. Every time someone joins him, it's not a pop. It's a pillar. That's the genius of it. He's not selling hype. He's selling security. Roman sells fear. Seth sells future. And in this new world, that difference could decide who survives. Because Money in the Bank is no longer about contracts and briefcases. It's about dominance. And when Zilla Fatu shows up to demolish someone backstage, he's not just breaking bodies. He's exposing weaknesses. And Paul Heyman? He's already planning the response. One more enforcer. One more shocker. The faction isn't finished. It's just getting started. And the scariest part? They don't need to win. They just need to outlast Roman. For 3 years, the Bloodline wasn't just a faction, it was the most emotionally rich story WWE had told in decades. It wasn't about wins and losses. It was about loyalty. Tradition. Power held together by the thinnest thread, family. And now that thread has snapped. The Bloodline wasn't supposed to end with a bang. It was supposed to evolve. At least that's what Roman Reigns believed. He built his empire not with strangers or paid allies, but with blood. Jimmy. Jay. Solo. And behind it all, Paul Heyman as the whispering hand, guiding the family toward untouchable status. But family is a fragile foundation. What started as dominance began to rot from the inside the moment trust was broken. First, Jay started questioning orders. Then Jimmy snapped. Solo stayed loyal, but always with eyes that held more questions than answers. Roman ruled like a king, but he forgot one thing: kings fall when the court rebels. Wrestling fans remember the super kicks. The walkouts. The emotionally raw promos. Jay calling himself main event not because Roman said so, but in defiance. Jimmy doing the unthinkable, kicking his own cousin in the jaw. Solo, always lurking, waiting for a moment to choose. Heyman, playing both sides, feeding information like a double agent. It was always going to fall apart. But no one expected Roman to abandon the concept of family entirely. That's exactly what he did the moment he brought in Zilla Fatu. Zilla isn't part of the family in a traditional sense. He's a relative, yes, but distant. Untested. Uninvited to the original table. He didn't sit at Roman's side through War Games or WrestleManias. He wasn't baptized in the Bloodline's tribal warfare. So why him? Because Zilla represents everything Roman no longer trusts in Jimmy, Jay, and Solo. Obedience. Simplicity. Raw allegiance. Zilla doesn't come with questions. He doesn't care about history. He doesn't ask why. He breaks who he's told to break. And that, more than anything, tells you how much Roman has changed. The man who once forced family members to kneel now demands nothing from them. Because they've all failed him. Or, in his mind, betrayed him. Jay left. Jimmy turned. Solo vanished. Roman looked around and saw no brothers, only broken pieces of a dynasty that was supposed to be eternal. So, he picked up something else entirely, a weapon. Zilla isn't here to rebuild the bloodline. He's here to bury it. And the symbolism couldn't be clearer. In one quiet decision, Roman replaced the heart of his faction with muscle. Family with firepower. The WWE Universe felt it instantly. You could hear it in the crowd reactions. Not cheers. Not boos. Confusion. Shock. Some even disbelief. Because this wasn't Roman trying to fix what was broken. This was Roman erasing what he sees as weakness. That's betrayal on its own. The man who once cried in the ring with Jay, who called Jimmy Day One, now walks beside a stranger with fists like cinder blocks and no emotional baggage. And what does that mean for Solo Sikoa? His silence has become deafening. He hasn't shown up since the night Reigns disappeared after WrestleMania. Not even on social media. No run-ins. No statements. Not even leaks from insiders. Why? Because Solo is the ultimate wildcard. He stayed loyal the longest. He protected Roman even when Jay and Jimmy split. He didn't take sides. Until there were no sides left to take. Now, Roman returns and doesn't even mention his name. Doesn't ask for him. Doesn't call. That silence cuts deeper than any super kick ever could. And fans have started to notice. What happens when Solo returns, and finds Zilla standing where he used to? What happens when a brother is replaced by a stranger? That's the emotional fracture Heyman is counting on. The one he might exploit next. There are rumors now, quiet ones, that Solo may resurface on Rollins' side. Not out of alignment with their cause. Out of revenge. Because Roman didn't just move on. He replaced him. The same way he replaced Jay. The same way he replaced family with fear. For years, Roman Reigns used the phrase "acknowledge me" as a command. Now, it sounds like a question. Because who's left to answer? Jimmy is a shell of his former self, floating between brands. Jay is doing his own thing on Raw, clearly done with tribal politics. Solo is gone. And Heyman? He's feeding Seth now. The family is in ruins. And Roman torched the ashes by bringing in Zilla. Zilla Fatu doesn't care about the legacy of the Anoa'i name. He's not chasing the Usos' record-setting tag title run. He doesn't want to be part of the Bloodline history books. He wants to be feared. And in a brutal twist of irony, he's now the most loyal man Roman has. Because he has no personal stake. That's what Roman sees as strength now. Not love. Not loyalty. Indifference. If Zilla ever turns on Roman, it won't be emotional. It'll be lethal. But for now, he's the perfect enforcer. The anti-Usos. The anti-Solo. The anti-family. This isn't a faction anymore. It's an operation. And the bonds that once held the bloodline together, shared trauma, brotherhood, legacy, are nothing but ghost stories. What remains is fire and fear. Roman Reigns has made his choice. The family is dead. Long live the punishment. You don't train a monster. You unleash one. But before Zilla Fatu could become Roman Reigns' enforcer, he had to become something else first, controlled chaos. And to do that, he had to be stripped down, reshaped, and rebuilt, not by WWE, but by reality. Zilla didn't come from the usual pipeline. He didn't rise through NXT. He didn't spend years perfecting camera angles or learning how to deliver snappy promos. When he stepped into a wrestling ring, it wasn't to entertain. It was to survive. After his release from prison, Zilla didn't reach out to WWE. He didn't call in family favors or drop the Umaga's son line to open doors. Instead, he walked into the hot, unforgiving gym at Booker T's Reality of Wrestling school in Houston and asked to start at the bottom. Not many believed he'd last. That school eats people alive. It's not glamorous. No media crew. No red carpets. It's reps, it's sweat. It's humiliation. But Zilla wasn't there to perform. He was there to punish himself. Day 1, he refused to speak on camera. Booker T offered to hype his arrival, Zilla declined. He didn't want exposure. He wanted isolation. The only thing louder than the chain link ropes were the grunts he made pushing through wall sits, power cleans, and endless bump drills. He trained like a man on parole from something worse than prison, legacy. The pressure of being Umaga's son doesn't just hang in the air. It crushes you. Every time he walked into the gym, every trainee whispered the same thing, "That's him." Every trainer watched him with extra focus. Every fan online asked, "When's he signing with WWE?" But Zilla had a different plan. He wasn't trying to be the next member of the family business. He was trying to be the first of something else. His in-ring style was wild at first, too much energy, too little control. He threw himself into every corner. His strikes weren't pretty. His footwork was raw. But every coach who saw him agreed on one thing: he hit with bad intentions. And that couldn't be taught. Booker T called him a pressure cooker in boots. Quiet, intense, self-contained, until the bell rang. Then he exploded. Headbutts. Slams. Chops that echoed louder than the commentary. And when he hit a Samoan drop, it wasn't just in homage to his father, it felt like a statement. A warning. Within 6 months, Zilla was sparring with the best students. Within a year, he was leading them. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't soaking up attention. He was punishing people, and asking for more reps. That's when Roman Reigns started watching. The tribal chief had eyes everywhere. Through the family, through Heyman, through old connections in the industry. It wasn't long before clips of Zilla started making their way to him. No polish. No gimmick. Just grit. Roman didn't reach out immediately. He waited. Watched. Wanted to see if Zilla was real or just another Bloodline echo trying to cash in. But Zilla kept showing up. Kept hurting people. Kept improving. By year 2, Zilla had become a whisper in the indie scene. He wrestled under other names. Wore a hoodie during entrances. He didn't want fame. He wanted fights. And he wanted silence. Roman liked that. When the two finally met in person, there were no cameras. No press release. Just two men talking behind closed doors in a private gym in Florida. According to one backstage source, Roman asked Zilla one question: "What do you want out of this?" Zilla answered without hesitation: "To hurt the people you can't reach." Roman didn't shake his hand. He nodded once. And the deal was done. From that moment, the training intensified. Roman didn't send him to Performance Center. He sent him to hell. Private gyms. Underground sparring. Sessions with shoot-style legends. Conditioning with ex-military trainers. Promo classes with no scripts, just a room, a mic, and one demand: speak like you mean it, or don't speak at all. Zilla chose not to speak. His language was physical. The workouts were designed to break him. Not physically, but mentally. Roman didn't want another wrestler. He wanted a weapon with clarity. Someone who wouldn't flinch under the lights. Someone who didn't want to perform. Someone who wanted to finish the job and disappear into shadow. Zilla passed every test. He didn't complain. He didn't show off. He just worked. And when the time came to debut, not in a match, not in a promo segment, but in a cold, wordless walk beside Roman Reigns. The WWE Universe didn't need a video package. They saw it in his body language. In his eyes. This wasn't the start of a career. This was the beginning of a mission. Because that's what Roman forged him into. Not a superstar. Not a character. A tool. And every week since, Zilla's done what he was trained to do: stand close, strike first, leave questions. His presence changes the temperature of a room. Backstage staff say you can feel it. He doesn't hang out in catering. He doesn't shake hands with producers. He leans against concrete walls, watching. Measuring. Waiting for someone to get out of line. He doesn't joke. He doesn't network. He studies. And when his music hits, or, more often, when Roman gestures, it's like watching an avalanche get pushed off a ledge. Zilla isn't just here to be part of the story. He's here to erase everyone else's. That's what makes him different from every other enforcer WWE's ever had. Diesel was big. Batista was raw. Solo was stoic. Zilla is personal. Because this isn't just about helping Roman. It's about vengeance, for his father, for his name, and for the time he lost. When Zilla hits the ring, he's not performing. He's paying off a debt. And everyone in his way is collateral. This is what Roman needed. Not backup. Not family. A monster built in silence. And now? That monster's been turned loose.